She was just another target, until he saw something worth saving. The marked prey. The galaxy was vast and indifferent, but for Lyra Vosh, it was nothing but a series of hiding places that grew smaller with each passing day. She pressed her back against the cold metal wall of the maintenance shaft, her breath forming small clouds in the frigid air of Novaria Station's lower decks. The bioscanners would sweep this section soon, and she needed to be gone before they detected her unique genetic signature. Lyra wasn't human. Her iridescent violet skin with its network of luminescent veins made that obvious, but she looked humanoid enough to blend in with the crowd if she wore the right clothes. The problem was those blasted scanners. They could identify her Cerulean DNA from 50 meters away, and the bounty on her capture had doubled in the last month alone. A sharp pain lanced through her temple, and her vision blurred momentarily. The neural suppressors she'd been taking were wearing off, which meant her abilities would soon resurface. Under different circumstances, that would be a blessing. The natural Cerulean gift of bioelectric manipulation had saved her life more times than she could count, but using it also made her easier to track, leaving a distinct energy signature that the hunter's equipment could detect from orbit. Just a little longer, she whispered to herself, fishing in her pocket for another suppressant tablet. One left. Enough to get through the night, maybe. After that, she'd need to either find more or risk using her abilities to defend herself. The distant sound of boots on metal grating made her freeze. 3 sets, maybe 4, moving with purpose. Not the casual stride of station security, but the measured pace of professionals. Hunters. Lyra swallowed the tablet dry and pulled the hood of her jacket lower, obscuring her face. The maintenance shaft branched ahead, left toward the docking bays, right toward the crowded markets of the station's mid-levels. The docks would have fewer people but more scanners. The market would be crawling with civilians, but also offered countless places to disappear. She chose the market. At least there, using lethal force would be difficult for her pursuers. The hunters might not care about collateral damage, but station security certainly would. Moving silently through the shaft, Lyra reached a junction where the air grew warmer, carrying the mingled scents of exotic foods, machine oil, and too many bodies in too small a space. She pried open a ventilation grate and peered down into the bustling marketplace. Vendors hawked their wares beneath strings of flickering lights, while patrons from dozens of species haggled and browsed. Perfect. She dropped down into a narrow alley between stalls, landing with practiced silence, and immediately adopted the hunched, hurried posture of a station worker heading home after a long shift. No one gave her a second glance. 3 steps into the crowd, a hand clamped onto her shoulder. "Thought you were clever, didn't you?" The voice was low, gravelly, unmistakably Braxian. "The boss wants you alive, but he didn't specify undamage." Lyra's training kicked in. She dropped instantly, twisting out from under the grip and sweeping her leg in an arc that should have taken the hunter off his feet. Should have, but the Braxian was ready, jumping her sweep and lunging forward with a neural baton already humming with charge. "Someone help!" Lyra shouted, her voice deliberately pitched to carry. "Security. This man is trying to kidnap me." Heads turned. A nearby vendor, a hulking Teruvian with 4 arms, stepped forward with a scowl. "We don't want trouble here." The distraction was all Lyra needed. She grabbed a handful of spice from a nearby stall and flung it into the Braxian's eyes. He howled, clawing at his face, and she bolted through the crowd. Behind her, 2 more figures materialized from the throng. Humans in nondescript clothing, but moving with the fluid precision that marked them as professionals. One spoke into a wrist communicator while the other pursued, hand already reaching inside his jacket. Lyra changed direction, diving between shoppers, knocking over displays to create obstacles. Her suppressant was barely holding. She could feel her bioelectric field struggling to manifest, little sparks dancing at her fingertips. If it broke through now, she'd be lit up like a beacon to every hunter on the station. The market opened onto a wide promenade overlooking the station's central atrium. Hundreds of levels stretched above and below, a vertical city humming with life and commerce. Lyra spotted a public transport pod waiting at a nearby platform. 3 seconds to reach it, maybe 4 before her pursuers emerged from the market. She didn't make it. A stun bolt sizzled past her ear, close enough that she felt the heat on her skin. Another struck the transport pod's door control, sending sparks flying and sealing it shut. Trapped. Lyra spun to face her hunters. The 2 humans had been joined by the Braxian. His eyes still watering, but his neural baton held steady. Behind them, 2 more figures approached, a lean Vexillion with chrome cybernetic arms and a massive ridge-faced Krell whose species was renowned for tracking prey across entire star systems. End of the line, Cerulean, the lead human said, a thin smile spreading across his weathered face. You've led us on quite a chase, but the game's over. Lyra backed against the railing, glancing over her shoulder at the dizzying drop below. The suppressant was definitely failing now. She could feel her power building, electric current crawling beneath her skin like thousands of tiny insects. Who sent you? She demanded, playing for time, searching for options. The hegemony, the consortium, or is it the good doctor himself this time? The hunter shrugged. Does it matter? Credit spends the same regardless of who's paying. He gestured to the others, who began to spread out, cutting off any possible escape routes. Now we can do this the easy way, where you come quietly and arrive relatively intact, or the hard way, which ends with you in a stasis pod missing some non-vital parts. Your choice. Lyra's hands gripped the railing behind her. 5 hunters, all armed, all experienced. The suppressant failing. No backup, no allies, no plan. This was it, the moment her luck finally ran out. Then she saw him, a human, tall and broad-shouldered, watching the confrontation from the shadows of a maintenance alcove. Unlike the gawking bystanders who had already cleared the area, he wasn't running or calling for security. He was assessing. Military, maybe, or ex-military from his stance. Their eyes met briefly, and something passed between them. Not recognition, but understanding. Lyra had no reason to believe this stranger would help her. Humans were as likely to collect the bounty as anyone else, but in that moment of connection, she made her decision. I choose option 3, she said, and without warning, let her suppressant fail completely. Violet electricity exploded from her body in a stunning display of raw power. The hunters staggered back, temporarily blinded. The station's lights flickered and dimmed. And in that moment of chaos, Lyra Vosh vaulted over the railing and plummeted into the atrium below. She wasn't committing suicide. Ceruleans could generate bioelectric fields strong enough to slow a fall if they had sufficient power. But with the suppressants still partly in effect, she wasn't certain she could manage it. As the levels blurred past her, Lyra concentrated, forcing every ounce of her ability to manifest. The violet glow around her intensified, creating resistance, slowing her descent, but not enough. Not nearly enough. The floor was rushing up too quickly, and her power was still too weak after months of chemical suppression. Her last thought before impact was simple. At least I die free. But the impact never came. Something slammed into her from the side. No, someone, wrapping powerful arms around her and twisting to take the brunt of the fall. They crashed through a holographic advertisement, hit a maintenance drone that partially broke their momentum, and finally landed on a cargo platform with bone-jarring force. Lyra rolled free, stunned but alive, and found herself staring into the face of the human who had been watching from the alcove. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead, and his breathing was labored, but his gray eyes were clear and focused. That, he said through gritted teeth, was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen. He winced as he sat up. Commander Darius Reed. And you're someone with a lot of very determined friends. They're not friends, Lyra managed, her voice hoarse. And why would you? A bolt of energy struck the platform near them, sending splinters of metal flying. Explanations later, Reed said, pulling her to her feet with surprising strength. Right now, we run. And as the hunters rappelled down from above, weapons already firing, Lyra found herself following this strange human into the depths of the station, wondering if she'd just escaped one trap only to fall into another. The reluctant savior. Commander Darius Reed hadn't planned on saving anyone today. He'd come to Novaria Station for supplies, information, and maybe a drink or two before heading back to the frontier. Getting involved in someone else's problems was exactly the kind of complication he'd spent the last 3 years avoiding. Yet here he was, sprinting through the station's maintenance corridors with a fugitive Cerulean at his heels and a team of elite hunters in pursuit. Old instincts had kicked in the moment he'd seen the confrontation, the predatory stance of the hunters, the desperate defiance of their prey. He'd intended only to observe, perhaps alert station security if things got too brutal. But when the woman had leaped over the railing, something inside him had moved without conscious thought. "This way," he said, guiding her down a narrow passage that branched from the main corridor. The distant sound of boots on metal told him their pursuers weren't far behind. "My ship is docked in Bay 17, Lower Commercial District. If we can reach it, they'll have people watching the registered docks by now." The Cerulean woman cut in, her breathing surprisingly steady despite their pace. "These aren't amateurs." Reed glanced at her. Up close, her alienness was more pronounced, not just the violet skin and luminescent veins, but something in the way she moved, too fluid to be entirely natural. The faint electric charge in the air around her raised the hair on his arms. "Neither am I," he replied, tapping a sequence into his wrist communicator. "Vex, prep for emergency departure. Authorization read 7 Alpha. And yes, we have company coming." A gruff voice crackled through the device. "Again, Commander. One of these days I'm going to leave without you." "No, you won't." 15 minutes. Reed stopped at a junction, checking both directions before continuing. They were in the industrial section now, among massive processing units that recycled the station's air and water. The background hum would help mask their movements, and the dense machinery provided cover. "You have a ship with AI integration?" the Cerulean asked, clearly surprised. "Those are restricted technology in most systems. Vex isn't AI. He's something else." Reed paused, studying her face. "You have a name. Might as well know who I'm risking my neck for." She hesitated, then nodded. "Lyra. Lyra Vosh." "Well, Lyra Vosh, right now we need tow." He stopped abruptly, pulling her behind a large filtration unit as a security drone buzzed past. "They're accessing station security. We need to move faster." "Why are you helping me?" Lyra asked, her voice a low whisper. "You don't know me. You don't owe me anything." It was a fair question, one Reed himself had been avoiding. He'd spent 3 years carefully minding his own business after what happened on Talaris Prime. 3 years of taking safe, simple jobs that kept him away from hegemony space and the complications of politics and power. 3 years of trying to forget what it felt like to fight for something larger than his next paycheck. "Let's just say I don't like the odds of 5 against 1. He finally answered. "We can discuss my heroic character flaws after we're safely in hyperspace." A flicker of something, doubt, perhaps, or suspicion, crossed Lyra's face. "You expect me to leave the station with you, a stranger, as opposed to staying here with the friendly folks trying to put you in a stasis pod?" "Yes." Before she could respond, an alarm blared overhead. A synthetic voice echoed through the corridors. "Attention all personnel. Security lockdown in progress. Remain in your current location until further notice." Reed swore under his breath. "They're shutting down the station. We need to move. Now." They ran, no longer concerned with stealth. The lockdown meant emergency bulkheads would be closing, potentially cutting off their route to the docking bay. Reed led them through a maze of service tunnels, relying on 3 previous visits to Novaria, and an excellent memory for escape routes, a professional habit that had saved his life more than once. As they rounded a corner, a figure stepped out of the shadows. A station security officer with his weapon drawn. "Halt, by order off." Reed didn't hesitate. He launched forward, deflecting the weapon with one hand while delivering a precise strike to the man's neck with the other. The officer crumpled, unconscious but alive. "You didn't kill him," Lyra noted, a hint of surprise in her voice. "He's just doing his job," Reed replied, appropriating the officer's access card. "Unlike our friends back there, he's not being paid to bring you in specifically." Using the stolen card, they passed through 2 security checkpoints before reaching the lower levels where smaller vessels docked. Reed's ship, the Windward, was a modified. The ship's interior was surprisingly well maintained compared to its exterior. Clean, functional, with equipment that looked military-grade despite its civilian markings. Reed staggered to the cockpit, dropping heavily into the pilot's seat. Cutting it close as usual. "Commander," a gravelly voice emanated from the ship's communication system. "Good to see you too, Vex," Reed replied, his hands flying over the controls. "Emergency launch protocol. Get us out of here before they lock down the bay doors." "Already on it. Might want to hold on to something." The Windward detached from its docking clamps with a violent jerk, thrusters engaging at maximum power before they were fully clear of the bay. The acceleration pushed them back into their seats as the ship shot into open space, leaving Noveria Station rapidly shrinking behind them. Lyra gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles pale against her violet skin. "They'll send pursuit ships." "Let them try," Reed said, a hint of pride in his voice as he patted the ship's console. "The Windward can outrun anything the station has." True to his word, the ship's engines flared brighter as they cleared the station's traffic lanes, and within minutes they had left Noveria far behind. Reed plotted a course that would take them through a nearby asteroid field, difficult to navigate but excellent for losing pursuit, before making the jump to hyperspace. Only when they were safely hidden among the asteroids did he finally relax, turning to face his unexpected passenger. Now that they were no longer running for their lives, he took a moment to truly look at her. Despite her alien features, he could read the exhaustion in her posture, the wariness in her eyes, the slight tremor in her hands as the adrenaline wore off. "You're injured," Lyra observed, nodding toward his side where he still held a protective hand. "Cracked ribs. Nothing that hasn't happened before." He gestured toward a small medical kit mounted on the wall. "There's pain meds in there if you need them. You took a pretty hard fall back there, even with my heroic intervention." She ignored the attempt at humor. "Why did you help me?" "The real reason this time." Reed sighed, running a hand through his short-cropped hair. "Because I've seen what happens to people like you. Special abilities, unique genetics. The powerful consider you resources, not people. And I've spent too much of my life working for the powerful." He hesitated, then added more quietly, 3 years ago, I was leading a special operations team for the hegemony. We were sent to extract a high-value asset from a research facility. Turned out that asset was a child, a Cerulean child, like you. They'd been experimenting on her for years." Lyra's expression hardened. "What happened to her?" "We got her out. Got her somewhere safe." Reed's eyes grew distant with the memory. "It was the last mission I ever ran for the hegemony. Turned in my commission the day we returned. And now you're what? A mercenary with a conscience." "Independent contractor," he corrected with a half-smile. "The conscience is an unfortunate side effect." Lyra studied him for a long moment before speaking again. "Thank you, for what it's worth." "Don't thank me yet," Reed replied, his expression turning serious. "Those hunters will keep coming. They've invested too much to give up now. And I need to know what makes you valuable enough for them to risk a public confrontation on a neutral zone station." She looked away, her luminescent veins pulsing slightly brighter, a sign of stress. Reed guessed. "It's complicated," she finally said. "It always is." Reed checked the navigation system. They were approaching the jump point. We've got about 12 hours in hyperspace before we reach anywhere remotely safe. Plenty of time for complicated. Lyra didn't immediately respond. Instead, she placed her hand on the console, and Reed watched in fascination as her bioelectric field connected with the ship's systems. Displays flickered, data scrolled faster than human eyes could process, and for a brief moment, the ship's lights dimmed. When she withdrew her hand, her expression was different, more resolved, perhaps even a touch more trusting. Your ship has no tracking devices, no monitoring systems linked to any government or corporate entity. You've gone to considerable lengths to remain off the grid. Reed raised an eyebrow. You could have just asked. I prefer verification to trust, she replied. If I tell you why they're hunting me, you become a target too. More than you already are for helping me escape. I became a target the moment I decided to play hero, Reed said with a shrug that made him wince as his ribs protested. Might as well know what for. Lyra took a deep breath, seemed to come to a decision, and began to speak. What do you know about Project Ascension?